Swim Things in Blue Springs, your one-stop shop for all things swim. Pools, spas, patio furniture, swimwear, and accessories. Visit them in Blue Springs or at www.swimthings.com. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on this bonus episode of The Journey. We're taping this in December 2020, 6 months after we posted our first interview on YouTube. Molly, we've talked to some amazing people, haven't we?
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, they're all just so fascinating, from Olympians and high school state champions and triathletes and legendary coaches. And I just want to thank them all. We interviewed 27 people, and I want to thank all 27 of them for being a part of the show in 2020. So to close out 2020, Molly and I want to share with you a couple of moments that we each remember from all the interviews we did. Is it okay if I go first, Molly?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so my first highlight comes from the first interview we did, which was with Olympian Milo Kavik. Now, everybody, of course, knows him from winning the silver medal in the 100 fly at the Beijing Olympics. And I guess that's probably what's going to follow him for the rest of his days. But, you know, the stories he told about that race was compelling, but it was really the stuff he talked about growing up in Southern California that was even more interesting, especially the stuff where he talked about the influence that his father put on him as a young athlete. So, and I think it really impacted his swimming career. So let's take a listen to what Milo had to say.
People that came from Eastern Europe, many of them come from communist countries. And Yugoslavia is what Serbia once was before the war. Yugoslavia was actually a socialist country with a dictator, and growing up in those surroundings and in much different surroundings, they immigrated to the States, and of course, the way they thought and the way they viewed the world was much different than American people. So, and as such, being raised, my brother and I definitely had it a whole lot different. Not to knock on kids nowadays, but we didn't get anything in our lives. Like everything had to be earned. And I just remembered that, when we didn't do well, all that was measured was medals and our results. And for us, to kind of blow past just kind of my early childhood, I mean, it comes to the point to where, I went to the Olympic final or the semifinals in 2004 at the age of 20. And my suit opened up. We had the body suits, and my suit opened up at the 50-meter mark. My turn, this water went in my suit, and I went from first to last in the best part of my race, which is underwater. So everyone knew that there was something wrong, but I ended up being 10th overall after those semis. And I remember my father, he didn't talk to me for about 4 months. Just disappointment. He was disappointed that it disappointed into me that I blew it. And growing up with this Eastern European background, my experience and how my experience was different than a lot of kids was I never got coddled, or I never got hugged, or I never got anything. I always got the truth. You either screwed this up or you blew it, or you're not my son. And it's a very, very hard psychological way to go about in your childhood. I'll admit, like, that was one of my complexes, like growing up, like nothing was ever enough. And I wouldn't recommend it to any parents listening, but a lot of people, such as Tiger Woods, Andre Agassi, back then the tennis player, their fathers had filmed biographies, and that's how they spoke, how they raised their children. And likewise, my father, he took a play out of their playbook, and that's how I was raised. It was hard. It was hard. So, growing up, I felt like my experience was a whole lot different. There's the carrot and then there's a stick. I kind of felt like we got the stick most times. It wasn't ever a physical stick, but it was a stick in every other sense of that term. So, when I would race, I for the longest time I would race thinking, hey, this is what I want. I need to do just enough just to make this man happy, and it was never enough. So, growing up, I didn't much like swimming all up until I was able to leave home and go to college, and then finally kind of swim for myself. So yeah, a tough upbringing, but you know, in hindsight and looking at my career, nobody can necessarily say that he was wrong, right? And that kind of bugs me.
So you really need to watch the whole interview. Milo was such a great person to talk to, and it was very special. Thanks, Milo, for being our first guest on the journey. So, Molly, what's one of our interview subjects that really stood out for you?
So for me, I think one of the first ones that I kind of really connected with was with Amy Van Dyken. She talked about her 400 free relay win with 3 of her besties who, she kind of grew up competing against them. And I thought it was, really amazing and respectful how they were able to come together, have a common goal, and kill that goal, getting gold. And then being able to stand on the podium. And what I also really liked about that was she talked about behind the scenes, us girls are so fidgety with everything, fixing our jackets, fixing our hair, making sure everything's perfect for being on camera in front of the whole world. But just no one really knows that side. And so kind of just like seeing that and seeing they really are human and just hearing that, what she had to say was pretty amazing. Let's see what she had to say about it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You always think when you see the Olympics and you see those podiums, right? You always think, gosh, it's going to be cool for me to be up there. My happiest moments, the moments that I remember, are the ones where I'm standing there with my relay team, and like we're getting ready to go out and everyone's fixing each other's jackets and their hair so you look just fine. And let me borrow that brush. Is that some lip gloss? When you're up there by yourself, like you're pretty exposed and you're not fixing yourself. Like you're worried that you're going to vomit in front of the entire world, right? So to be up there with your teammates, it is the best feeling ever. And I think it's a great race that you brought up, the 400 free relay, because we were all such different personalities, right? All 4 of us. And all 4 of us had raced against each other, gone head to head, grunted at each other. Some of us would spit in each other's lanes. But at the end of the day, we came together as an amazing group. And those are girls that I will be friends with forever. And I know that's going to be shocking to a lot of people, but people mature, people grow. And those are the best moments. To be up there to hear the national anthem with your other 3 girls, I would much rather swim a relay than swim individual any day of the week.
Well, Amy is just an amazing woman. And if you want to watch the full video, we will put it down in our comments for you guys. Jeff, do you have another one?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was really tough. I mean, we're picking 2 out of 24 total out of 27, but Cooper Robinson's interview, just the things he opened up about were just. I mean, he didn't have to, but I think probably it was just really freeing for him to be able to do that, and I know he knew that by saying what he said, really probably would help somebody else who was going through his situation. So if you don't know about Cooper, in January 2016, he wrote an article on outsports.com about his struggles with coming out as a gay man in college. And in that article, he talked about the day that he considered ending his life by taking pills. Now, miraculously and wonderfully, he decided not to do it, and a friend intervened. And it was interesting how to hear him talk about how that suicide attempt was prompted by a deep depression over the fact that people found out he was gay. He never told anybody. It just kind of, the rumor mill started, and people were just talking to him about it, and he was ill prepared for it. What I've really, I still to this day, it really kind of gets me in my gut was when he talked about an incident that involved sexual assault right around that time. And I got emotional listening to it. And even for days afterward, it was just so moving to hear him say it. So let's hear about that a little bit more.
It took a downturn for the worst. I remember, my friend I told my friend Steven, and bless his heart, he kept it a secret. But other people starting to find out from other means. For example, my friend introduced me to the app Grinder. And at the time, I had no idea what it was. And, you know, and you meet other people in the community who the TCU gig community, I mean, who you think are very, who have the same intentions, good intentions that you do. But, you know, and you meet people and you think they're great, and you learn that they start spreading rumors about you, and they start telling other people your secret. And it was scary. It was very, very scary because I wasn't ready, you know, and I was being forced to come out of the closet, and I was dealing with a lot, you know, at the time. And I'm now just starting to open up about this too. There was a sexual assault that happened during that time that kind of threw me into a downward spiral. It was the fact that a lot of people were coming up to me and were telling or pointing fingers at me and saying, "You're the gay swimmer," you know, or people coming to me and saying, like, "I heard so and so got with you," and, you know, like, shared very private information when I wasn't ready to be who I was to the world. And so it definitely forced me to really come to terms with it when I wasn't ready. And there was this one night that I mentioned in my article that I wrote that I was just done. I was done. I didn't want to deal with it anymore. And so I had pills next to my bed. And I remember thinking, I don't have to deal with this anymore. You know, I'm not strong enough to deal with it anymore. It's too many people are forcing me to come to terms when I wasn't ready to let the world know. And I remember I took the bottle of pills, and I probably swallowed about 8 to 10, if I remember correctly. And I remember as I was doing it, something kind of just switched my mindset, I mean. And I just thought to myself, I was like, what am I doing? You know, and I like to think that it was divine intervention. And I just said, I can't let this beat me, you know? And it was a whole process. I remember I put the pills down and I was done. I was going to therapy at the time, and thank God for the TCU Counseling Center, because they have really saved my life. And I'll always be forever indebted to them. But I remember the next morning I went to the counselor's office, and I told her what happened. And it is standard protocol, like they have to call your parents, you know. And I was in the counseling office crying. And they had my mom on the phone, and I had to tell her what was all going on. And I didn't tell her exactly what was happening. I just said, you know, like, there's these bad things, I'm not having a good time. And so that happened. And, you know, she was very supportive. She said, we'll get through this, and, you know, it'll be fine. And so I went back to my dorm room, and I walked in, I slammed the door, and I just had a breakdown in my room. And my roommate, Mitch Adshead, sorry, I get a little emotional talking about it. My roommate, Mitch Adshead, he came in, he goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I'm not okay." And I told him everything that was happening. I told him about people who betrayed my trust. I told him about what people were saying, what happened. And he says, "We need to tell the coaches." And that was a huge, huge nightmare for me, because like I mentioned earlier, it was, you know, I don't know what was going to happen, because the head coach at the time was from middle of nowhere, West Texas, you know, conservative land. And so I thought, oh my gosh, like my scholarship is going to be taken away. You know, I'm going to be kicked off the team. And he goes, "It's not going to happen." And he literally had to take my hand, and we walked to the coach's office. And I remember going inside the offices, and I went to my backstroke coach, and she's like, "I knew something was up. Let's talk." let's talk. And so we all talked, and I told her everything, and she started crying. We all started crying. And then she was like, we have to tell Richard, the head coach at the time. And it was like a huge thing, because I was like, here it comes, here it is. Either I'm on the team still or I'm not. And he comes in, he's like all happy-go-lucky. And he just says, and I tell him everything. He just says, he was very supportive. He goes, if I need to check on you every single night, I will come to campus and make sure that you're okay. He goes, nothing that you could ever say or do will make us not love who you are and appreciate you on the team.
So I didn't come out as a gay man in college for the same reasons that Cooper struggled with. I was afraid of how my closest friends would react and whether I would be ostracized for it. So I really hope you watch Cooper's interview, because it was a lesson for all of us about how we can't really determine what other people are going to think about us. We have to really accept ourselves. And I think Cooper really kind of showed that after his suicide attempt. He started to understand how he couldn't really depend on everybody else, even though he did have a lot of help from his friends and coaches after that. But I think he's a much better person because of what he went through. And just big thank you to Cooper for that. So Molly, I'm really curious, who's your second pick?
So my last one is probably going to be Reid Jeffrey. We did her towards the beginning of our journey. And what really struck out to me with Reid Jeffrey was her silent killer of depression. So anyone can go through it, especially people who may not even think goes through it. But she was left to her own devices to handle things as a college student, as a college athlete, and she didn't have a lot of guidance through that, being in a new environment. And she made it through, she made it out. And that just shows, how strong and a person she is and how she can persevere like that. Let's take a look what she had to say about that.
After the 2004 Olympics, I kind of went through a pretty bad bout of depression. I went right to college after the Olympics were over, and I got there late, like, mid-September or something like that. So classes had already been in for a month. They, threw me in some high level classes because that's all that was left. And pretty much I got ignored for a little while, and I was left to my own devices, and I, never really did anything or acted out in high school. I never drank. I never partied. I never snuck out of the house. I never did any of that stuff. So, I was left alone, and I just gone to the biggest, pinnacle of my sport. And I was like, well, I'm going to let loose and have fun. No one's paying attention to me. No one's, doing whatever. And I kind of went down this really dark hole for a while, and, dealt with some suicidal thoughts, and went to a therapist for a while at school. Mark Schubert was great about setting me up with somebody who really helped me a lot, like really a lot. She was actually an Olympic breaststroker too, like a really long time ago. So like she had such a unique perspective to be able to like talk to a therapist that also swam. So that was life-changing. She suggested I get a dog. So my mom got me a puppy who actually is turning 14 next month. I still have her. And the dog did a lot to kind of help me get my stuff together and, pull things together. And, but I still I hadn't really been training well for the last 3 years leading up to it. And I was still a mess. I was doing a lot of drugs. I got into that for a while. I'm, tattooed head to toe for a reason. I was dealing with like a lot of addiction stuff. And, I thought to myself, I was like, I could work hard for the next 5 or 6 months and make a run at it. But knowing what I had gone through in 2004, where I was so sick, and I just told myself, like, you're going to make it. Like, knowing that I could potentially be taking that opportunity away from other kids when I just kind of like didn't want it, it didn't feel right. So I was like, it's time to stop for a little while. I didn't necessarily think it was going to be forever, but I just knew that it just wasn't right,
So another thing about Reid that she talks about is how she got a dog to help, cope, get her mind off things like that. And for me personally, during this whole COVID experience, being in lockdown, my dog Max is a chocolate lab, and can honestly say I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. He has gotten me through so many things. Just before COVID, I had horrible breakup of over 3.5 years. And so it was very, very hard to be at home, be isolated, and just having that dog who doesn't even know what's going on, but always is, you know, fun, loving, loves life, is just perfect to be around. He's my life, my light. I love him.
Yeah, it's really good.
Couldn't do anything without him. He's my rock, and I get so excited and so sad when I go back home to school or back home. He gets so excited to see me. So we have a really, really close bond.
That's really good to hear, and everybody needs something like that. My cats are kind of the same way, even though like cats are, some days they'll look at you and like, okay, go away. I don't need you.
Right.
But yeah, pets can really help, especially in this quarantine time. We were, you know, with our pets a lot. So that was kind of one thing that maybe they weren't ready for. But
yeah.
I know that probably some dogs like yours probably just loved seeing you every second of every day.
For sure.
Yeah, that was really, really good pick to have Reid Jeffrey highlighted there. I want to go back to really quick to Amy. You know, we obviously, a lot of people know Amy now for the tragic accident that happened to her. I think it was about 6 years ago, that's left her paralyzed from the waist down. And I want to highlight Amy's Army, which is a great foundation to help other people dealing with disabilities. And I've been a donor to that for years. And I was one of the first people to lend my support to that when she announced it. And I hope viewers will do that as well. And, you know, throughout this whole series, we're going to be highlighting a lot of athletes and coaches and people just in general. We're going to have a lot of causes out there that we believe in the journey, and we hope you will too. And so please make sure to contribute to those and take a look at them. We wouldn't be talking about them if they weren't something that was very impactful. So please do that. So with that, we're going to close out 2020. And, you know, we've got to tell you, we got some great interviews lined up for 2021. We don't want to give it away because we want you to be surprised, but there's some pretty exciting ones coming up. And again, we're going to run the whole gamut. We're not just going to get the big name stars. You know, they have some good stories too, but some really, some people you probably never heard of have some really good stories as well. And we want to be able to share those with you. So please subscribe to our show on YouTube, and please follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And you'll be able to even win some great prizes. We'll be doing some giveaways here and there, so you don't want to miss those.
Yep.
Any final thoughts, Molly?
Nope, I'm just super excited. You know, I've loved 2020 as it is very a growing time for everybody. It can be a hard and dark time for everybody, but I hope people watching this maybe will be a light in their life. So I can't wait to see what 2021 brings.
All right, everybody. So we're going to see you back on Monday for our first interview of 2021, and that's going to feature legendary diving coach John Walker. We hope you'll join us for that. So for everybody involved with the journey, I'm Jeff Commings. This is Molly Harmon, and we'll see you next time.